guys, welcome back to my channel. This is the lovely Annie McDayter, who is a stylist and a good friend. She has worked with me on a bunch of stuff as a model, as a stylist, and we've actually done some collaborations on photo projects because she's just incredibly talented and good at everything, which drives me crazy, but I love her for it. So let's dive in. We're going to do a quick Q&A with her and kind of get to know what the role of a fashion stylist is and why they're so important for fashion photography. I mean, obviously, I think it's pretty, obvious why it's so important because it is fashion photography. But we're gonna get to know. Honestly, you'd be surprised at how many people undervalue stylists' work and,
the importance of the clothing.
So let's start out with how did you get into styling?
Well, I got into it actually as a hobby. There's a lot of people in the industry who need stylists, and I was already doing some photography and some modeling, and I thought it would be kind of a really good idea to learn how the styling aspect worked. So if I needed to style for my own photography, I could. And it became really apparent really quickly how much people needed stylists and how in demand styling work was, especially like in our circles here. There aren't that many stylists.
Yeah, in Toronto, they're like a very hot commodity. In some places like New York and kind of fashion centers, you're gonna have more stylists, more people who want to get into styling, but in Canada it's a little bit rarer because the industry is not as big.
Exactly. And I had a love for fashion already, so just getting the chance to actually enjoy fashion and be able to put together fashion looks and really expand my idea of how to style. That was, I think, probably like the most exciting part of getting into it for me.
For sure. How did you go about starting to style, and what was your way in, and who did you work with at first, that kind of thing?
Well, I first started out, I think my first styling shoot was for you, actually.
Which one was that?
I think it was the dark fashion shoot.
Oh yeah.
So I first started off by styling for a friend, the lovely Jordan here, and it was really great getting a chance to style for someone who I was so close with first, because there was a little bit of room for error, not a huge lot, but like,
oh no, absolutely,
it was very much a chance to try it out, and if it didn't really end up working out, it wasn't a huge deal. So I ended up styling for a shoot with you and two models from Ireland.
Yeah.
Being in a situation where I'm trying something new first with someone who I've worked with before and I trust and I'm comfortable with, it definitely made things a lot easier. So starting off for your first attempt, working with someone you've already worked with before and you trust is really helpful.
Next question is, what is your favorite part about being a stylist?
I think it's the clothing. I mean, I absolutely love fashion, and I was that kid who, when Project Runway came on, I'd hunker down and just marathon it, because I love seeing creations on people's bodies, and I find fashion is such a work of art, and it can be so expressive, and it changes depending on mood. It can express such different emotions depending on how things are put together, and a sequin top with one look might be very whimsical, and then another look it could be very dark and moody, so you have so much versatility. And I think that was something that's my favorite part, is having that ability to put together looks and to change the looks and change the emotion based on how you put things together, and being able to see fashion as a mood indicator is kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
So just the fashion part, that seeing the cool stuff.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, that it's a mood indicator, and it's interesting because that's totally true. Like, it depends on the mood of the stylist, and the mood of the shoot, and like the mood board and all of that. But I think it's also a lot, it shows a lot of the personality of the stylist.
Oh,
like,
for sure.
Working with different stylists, you can really see the difference in their personality, and
Oh yeah, for sure.
yeah, so it's really interesting seeing the pulls from different stylists, because the more you get to work with different creatives, the more you see how like drastically different each stylist's style is, and it's really it's really interesting to me, because you might take a sequin top and style it one way, and another stylist would style the sequin top absolutely completely differently.
And it completely, you try and stay objective, but your own style and your own opinion is going to seep in, and you know what, that is kind of what makes your work you. So.
Absolutely, yeah. And then, so what would you say is the hardest part of being a stylist?
I think the hardest part about being a stylist is putting together looks in short periods of time. And I've had photographers message me 3 days before a shoot and say, I want this, and this, I want 4 looks, and I want gowns, and you need time in order to make things to the best of their ability. Like, you need to have a chance to actually sit down and plan everything out. And so when you are put on the spot last minute, it definitely challenges you. It's definitely difficult, not impossible. I've put together some amazing shoots last minute. You're stuck in a situation where you have to do buy and return, which is what a lot of stylists do.
Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, so buy and return is where you kind of sneakily go into retail stores, you purchase the clothing with the tags intact, and then you make sure that once you're finished with the clothing for the shoot, you return it. And there are some issues with this. I mean, it's a little bit sneaky, but the biggest issue with this is, one, you're using clothing from retailers that are very mainstream. They're not the best quality, and sometimes if you don't pull the right clothing, it may look cheap on camera. And second of all, it requires you have to be extremely careful with every single item, or you lose money. That being said, you should be careful with every single piece of clothing anyway.
Yeah.
Especially if you're pulling from a designer, because you don't want to damage the designer's clothing. But for example, doing buy and return, instead of pulling vintage clothing from vintage stores, or I've seen people go to Value Village or Goodwill and pull some really amazing stuff. So you have to be careful, just because you will be returning it.
So do you have any tips for people who are getting into styling or have an interest in styling, or for perhaps like photographers who don't have access to stylists and have to do their own styling?
Well, firstly, I would say it's really important to keep an eye on what is happening in the fashion world. Everyone, thinks they have an idea of what's fashionable, and of course that changes person to person. But if you are doing fashion photography, let's say as an example, a prime example, you want your fashion photography, the styling of the shoot, you want it to be relevant. And so it's really important to be able to go and take a look at what people are doing. You can look on Instagram. Instagram is a really good tool for that. There are a lot of really popular and amazing bloggers out there who have really unique, amazing senses of style. You can look on, I use Pinterest a lot. I find that one is very useful to look through the way things have been styled for particular shoots. So if you're a photographer, let's say, and you have a particular theme in mind for a shoot you want to do, and you don't really know what kind of clothing you want to do, or you want to pull for it, it's good to look at images of similar styling or similar moods that you want in order to really get a sense of what you want and where to pull from. I mean, there is no shame in doing the buy return, but do keep in mind the way things will show up on camera. Keep in mind that they are still within your mood. So if you are going to H&M and you want to pull something and it's for a really romantic gown shoot, the small mini dress is not really going to have the same effect as a gown. So
Yeah.
keeping in mind where you're pulling from, keeping in mind that just because it's a gown doesn't mean it's bridal. Keeping in mind that, you know, a crop top might evoke some emotions that you don't want. Just keeping in mind of that the clothing, every piece of the clothing is an important puzzle piece, and that you need to be very particular with what you pick and what you pull, because it's so easy to just grab anything off the rack and say, oh, you know, it's pink, it matches my theme. And you really do need to think about it if you were doing fashion, because that's the point of the
whole
shoot.
point.
Yeah.
And so that kind of touches on the importance of styling. Before we go into that, I just had one more question about what you were saying. So is it like, for me as a photographer, when I'm creating mood boards, I always try to include photos that kind of show the style of the shoot. So I'll do sections for the makeup artist and hairstylist, and then sections of just like photography styles that, you know, kind of show the mood for the shoot. But I always try to include certain looks for the fashion and the clothing that are kind of specific to that shoot and kind of the direction that I want to go in. So do you find it's really important for mood boards to kind of show what, you know, what the direction is for the styling?
Oh, for sure. You know, I've had photographers come to me and they say, I have a shoot, I have 2 models, I really want you to style for it. And they'll send me a mood board and it'll all be shots of, like, they'll all be images of the kind of photo style they want to shoot or the makeup, but they'll forget the styling, and the styling will be all over the board. And I'll have, you know, there'll be some grunge looks in there and some high-end, like, you know, Wall Street looks mixed with, like, you know, stuff from the 90s, and it's just it's very difficult to pinpoint exactly what the photographer or the model or whoever is organizing the shoot, what they want. I might have to just go out and pull something that I think works, and it might not be what you want, and that's unfortunate because you know, if this is a collaboration or if you're paying me or what have you, you are the one who is coming up with the creative dream. And you know, if you have this particular idea in mind, you want to communicate.
Yeah, communication is so important. And so what to you makes a good mood board?
A good mood board, for me, shows at least, you know, 3 shots of the type of styling you're looking for.
Concept-wise, it is so important to communicate properly and create really good mood boards for the entire team. I actually, low-key just gonna like plug my other video, but I have a video on my process for creating mood boards, which I will link, thank you, which I will link down below in the description box, so be sure to check that out if you don't know how to create mood boards or, you know, just want to see my process for it. I use Pinterest, and I know a lot of people do. It's a great tool for creating mood boards, so definitely check that out.
Yeah, just on a point there, if you don't have a mood board, I have no idea what you want at all. So mood boards are really, really useful. I think they're actually one of the most important parts of planning a shoot, so definitely check out that video.